Good evening. The Hobbit continued. Not just any old Hobbit, the Hobbit. This is the original edition of The Hobbit. Okay, the first print of it, in fact. And I'm going to read this to you because this particular copy is different than any that came after it. And I have it. I have both. I have the normal book, the normal Hobbit book, but I also have this first edition, which is slightly different than the normal one, the one that we all know is associated with Lord of the Rings. That's because Tolkien rewrote it. And I'd like to say special thanks to J.R.R. Tolkien, who on the 25th of March is our Tolkien reading day. So I'll just read a little bit. Just a small sample. I'm just testing my own very wellness. Very well, said Bilbo, who was anxious to agree until he found out more about the creature, whether he was quite alone, whether he was fierce or hungry, and whether or he was a friend of the goblins. You ask first, he said, because he had not the time to think of a riddle. So Gollum hissed, What has roots as nobody sees is taller than trees. Up it goes, and yet never grows. Easy, said Bilbo. Mountain, I suppose. Does it get easy? We must have a competition, precious. So yeah, that's great, isn't it? All right, said Bilbo, not daring to disagree, and nearly bursting his brain to think of riddles that can save him from being eaten. 30 white horses on a red hill. First they chump, then they stamp, and then they stand still. That was all he could think of to ask. The idea of eating was rather on his mind. It was rather an old one too, and Gollum knew the answer as well as you do. Chestnuts, he said. Chestnuts, teeth, my precious. But we only had 6. Then he asked his second. Voiceless it cries, wingless flutters, toothless bites, mouthless mutters. Half a moment, cried Bilbo, who was still thinking uncomfortably about eating. Fortunately, he had once heard something rather like this before, and getting his wit back, he thought of the answer. Wind, of course, he said, and he was so pleased that he made up one on the spot. This'll puzzle the nasty little underground creature, he thought. An eye in a blue face saw an eye in a green face. That eye is like this eye, said the first eye, but in a low place, not in a high place. Shh, 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 said Gollum. He had been underground a long time and was forgetting this sort of thing, but just as Bilbo was beginning to wonder what Gollum's present would be like, Gollum brought up memories of ages and ages and ages before, when he lived with his grandmother in a hole in a bank by a river. When he lived with his grandmother in a hole by a bank. Yeah, shh, my precious, he said. Sun on the daisies it does. But these ordinary underground sort of riddles were tiring for him, and reminded him of days when he had been less lonely and sneaky and nasty, and that had put him out of his temper. What is more, they made him hungry, so this time he tried something a bit more difficult and more unpleasant. It cannot be seen, cannot be fed, cannot be heard, cannot be smelled. It lies behind stars and under hills, and empty holes it fills. It comes first and follows after, ends life, kills laughter. Fortunately for Gollum, Bilbo had heard that sort of thing before, and the answer was all around him anyway. Dark. he said, without even scratching his head or putting on his thinking cap. A box without hinges, key or lid? Yes, golden treasure inside his head. He asked to gain time until he could think of a really hard one. This he thought a dreadfully easy chestnut, but though he had not asked it in the usual, though he had not asked it in the usual words, but it proved a nasty poser for Gollum. He hissed to himself, and still he did not answer it. He whispered and spluttered. After some time, Bilbo became impatient. Well, what is it? Sorry, wrong voice. The answer's not a kettle boiling over, as you seem to think from the noises you are making. Give us a chance, Princess. Let us give it a chance. Well, said Bilbo, after giving him a long chance, what about your present? But suddenly Gollum remembered thieving from Nest long ago and sitting under the river bank teaching his grandmother to suck X's, and hissed, X's it is. Then he asked, alive without breath, as cold as death, never dirty, never drinking, all in mail, never clinking. I think that'll do. I'm getting creeped out by this. Right, that's test number 3. If all goes well, my memory may withhold this onslaught. And I'd like to thank Gerald Tolkien for writing this, and also to whoever published this. Who did publish this? I better say who published it. Published by the author. Right, it's George Allen and Unwin, and probably, by the Lord Tolkien's estate, have allowed it. Thank you for watching. Good night, Ray Ray. Good night.